The era we are living in today is a dream come true. Walt Disney. Hello everyone, thanks for listening to Dis-connected, an unofficial Disney podcast of magical proportions. I'm Whit Laxton, your Disney enthusiast host, and coming up...
it's missing something that all those other great Disney movies had that just make you go like, yes, this is amazing.
Our journey through the history of Disney animation continues with a special Dis-cussion on the era known as post-Renaissance. It hadn't really hit me yet that Disney was not making movies like they used to. This is Disney animation history, post-Renaissance. Hey guys, what's up? It's Whit, back for another episode of Dis-connected, along with my friend and fellow Disney enthusiast, Katie Carter, who is joining me via Skype. Hey Katie.
Hey Whit.
Hello. So Katie, today it's part 5 of our series in the history of Disney animation. We have talked about the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, the Disney Renaissance, and today we are talking the era that was post-Renaissance. Kind of a not so special time, but yet it's the time that I have very vivid memories of because I was old enough to really remember what was happening and remember when these movies came out.
I don't think I maybe have as many vivid memories as you do, because I think at this point was kind of where maybe lost some interest in them, but there are still a few good ones that came out of this era.
And I'm not surprised if you did lose interest because it kind of would have been easy to have done so. So yeah, let's jump into this. This is post-Renaissance. Of course, our last episode that was really the 90s. And so this starts out in the year 2000, the new century, with Fantasia 2000. And I guess this would have been a sequel to the 1940 Fantasia, which Walt wanted to make a sequel to that and redo the animation. And so Roy E. Disney actually was kind of the champion of getting this sequel made. And that took a long time, 1940 to 2000?
Yeah, definitely. And this one, I guess it is kind of a sequel, but it does really stand on its own. The only kind of link between them is that both films feature the Sorcerer's Apprentice short, which is kind of an interesting thing to include in the new one as well. But
it's the most iconic from the first one, so I could see why they would pick that.
Yeah,
but it's all different music too, other than that, I believe. And I think a Chicago Symphony did the music for this, or most of it. Also, there are live-action introductions to each segment in this movie, and you had, big names. Steve Martin did one, Bette Midler, Angela Lansbury, all introduced the little segments, among others, there, and that was different, too, from the original.
Yeah, they kind of had those in-between titles between each short with the original one, but it was more just cutting back to the orchestra. You didn't have all these celebrity guests coming out and doing a little speech. So that was different, and I think it breaks it up well, so you're not just going from one short to the other and they all blend together.
I read that it was the first animated movie to be released in Imax.
Yes, and I believe I saw it in Imax. I have some sort of memory of that happening. So that's pretty significant.
I don't think I saw this one in theaters. I do remember most of this era, though, just not this one for some reason. So, and I guess before we jump into the next set of movies, any other thoughts on Fantasia 2000?
Well, this was really a good opportunity for the Disney animators to start experimenting more with 3D computer animation, and basically every short in this film, except for, of course, Sorcerer's Apprentice, is a combination of 2D and 3D animation. They use a lot of different processes. It's really very experimental, very interesting, to use your word. But
yes.
Yeah.
I don't recall. I really haven't seen this one in so long, and I don't recall much about it other than Donald Duck was in one of the segments.
It was a Noah's Ark thing. And that was originally supposed to be something completely different. They had the music that they wanted to do for that. And I think Eisner wanted to have it revolve around a group of the classic Disney villains and have them like marching, and it was something about their children. It was really bizarre, like really bizarre. And a lot of the staff at Disney were like, this is weird, this is an abuse of the characters. So then they ended up completely changing that.
Good choice.
Yeah.
For sure. I was saying that Roy E. Disney was kind of the champion for having this done, but I believe that, with the 90s being when they started re-releasing, they started having the home VHS releases of all the classics, and I think the success of the Fantasia VHS is really what allowed Fantasia 2000 to be made. It was kind of noticing, well, people have a lot of interest in the original, so I guess we can now make this sequel that Walt wanted made for the longest time.
Right.
I don't know if Walt necessarily wanted it done that way, because I think he wanted just new segments added to the original one. But anyway, that's what ended up happening was Fantasia 2000. So past Fantasia 2000 is really when I can remember seeing all of these movies. And so I was probably, I would have been about 6 years old when the next feature, which was Disney's Dinosaur. And I'll go back and just mention that Fantasia 2000 was released on January 1st, 2000. And then Dinosaur a few months later, May 19th, 2000. And so I had the toys, I had everything. I really loved this movie. It is something special. Looking back on it now, it's kind of like, well, it's not doesn't look as cool as it did then, I don't think, but it's still a really cool movie. It is a mix of live action and 3D animation, kind of, just breathtaking scenery. And I think they made up these dinosaur species.
Made up a lot of things. Like I think
dinosaur names.
I think they actually like sent out releases like, hey, a lot of this is inaccurate and we know, so just getting it out there.
Yeah. Aside from, kind of a silly story for such a, breathtaking movie, I mean, wow, it's so beautiful.
It is. Yeah, and I know originally they were going to not have the characters talk. It was just going to be, I guess, more of like a silent film, you could say, to really enhance the realism of the visuals. And then studio executives were like, if we're going to, have this movie marketed to families and make a profit and all of that, they really need to be talking. So I think that does add a bit of silliness to it, which contrasts weirdly with these visuals that are so real. I mean, it's live action backdrops. They actually went and shot live footage in various areas around the world and then inserted 3D animated characters on top of that. So it's not as impressive today, like you said, but it's still cool.
At the time, I just remember thinking, man, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. It looks so great. And also, this was a time when I was old enough to really start being fascinated by how movies were made. And I remember watching, behind-the-scenes movie surfers specials of this movie. And it was just so cool to see how they made this thing. I know that voice cast-wise, Hayden Panettiere voices, like, the little lemur, Suri. And like I said a while ago, I had all the toys for this movie, and I had like a stuffed little Suri doll or whatever, stuffed animal plush. And oh man, just here with a memory for this. I took that to my sister's graduation. She graduated high school in 2000. Well, both of them. They're twins. And so they've graduated high school, and in all the little photos we have of their graduation day with me in it, here I am with the little lemur, with little Suri, and my family always jokes about how I took a little monkey to my sister's graduation, and it's in all the pictures, and I'm sitting there like, okay, it was not a monkey, it was a lemur, and it was from Disney's Dinosaur. Come on now.
I feel like it is a lot similar to The Land Before Time.
Yeah.
Which I definitely watched those movies all the time.
Yeah, I did too.
Way more than Dinosaur, but...
Not Disney.
I know.
But
I know. I feel
nevertheless.
like such a traitor by saying that, but
Yeah. And you bring that up, not a not Disney movie, but this was also an era when Dreamworks came in and really around this time and really started having, Disney had some competition with a lot of these kind of off the wall movies they were releasing. You had Shrek, you had Spirit. Remember Spirit?
I do remember because it came out at the same time as Star Wars Attack of the Clones, and all of the advertising.
Okay.
All of the advertising was like, oh, it's so much better than Star Wars. And I was like, how can you even compare that to Star Wars? Come on now.
Spirit's really good, though. It's really good.
I don't think I've never seen it now that I think
You probably
about it,
never watched it just because of
I'm
that.
so mad about the Star Wars jab.
Okay, well, when you have a chance, Spirit is really good.
Okay.
But yeah, you had DreamWorks releasing all of these movies at a time when Disney was not making, their best, or they were not making films that were as good as those that they had released in the 90s. You also had Pixar stepping up their game big time.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Monsters, Inc., Finding Nemo, The Incredibles. So as we continue down the list here, anything else to say about Dinosaur?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, towards the end of the year 2000, we had The Emperor's New Groove. December 15th, 2000 is when that came out. I remember seeing this one too.
I sort of remember seeing it, I think.
Yeah.
I know I like it, and it's such
I
a
do
funny
too.
movie. Yeah.
It's an underrated one, but it is hilarious.
It is.
I just remember all the promos for it. The big line was "Boom, baby," that he says. It was so good. So
Yeah.
this movie, knowing a little bit about the history of it, went through a lot of changes. Like, it was going to be a totally different movie when they had originally planned it out. I think they had wanted to do this in the 90s, like the early 90s, like after Lion King is when production began.
Yeah. It was supposed to be like a big musical, more like those movies like Lion King. And they brought Sting on to do
Sting.
music, and he did all this music that they ended up not using.
Yeah. I think the reason that it went through so many changes was because after Pocahontas and Hunchback kind of had not as much success as like Lion King, Aladdin, and the others, they wanted something less serious because the other one, the original idea they had for this, which was going to be a totally different name, something about like the Sun King or something, it was going to be a very serious story, so they changed it to be more comical, to kind of coincide with the success of the less serious Disney animated movies that they had released. And I'm pleased with how it turned out. It has nothing to do with The Emperor's New Clothes,
No.
the Hans Christian Andersen story, but the animation style looked really different from any of the 90s movies. This was the first 2D, well, other than Fantasia 2000, this was like the first of this era, and a departure from Tarzan, Mulan, the ones before it.
Yeah, well, those movies, I feel like they were striving for more realism, and this one's very stylized.
Not a bad difference, but
it's
different.
different, but yeah.
And voice cast, you had who did you have in it? You had John
Eartha
Goodman.
Kitt, yes, John Goodman.
Yeah, Eartha Kitt as Yzma,
Yeah,
hilarious.
so good. Is it
David
Spade as Cusco?
was Cusco. Yeah.
And Patrick Warburton is Kronk.
Kronk, yeah.
I know it is, again, very similar to another movie, which is DreamWorks' Road to El Dorado that came out at the same time. And I think that there was kind of some, I don't know if I want to say controversy, but there was some like, oh, did they copy us? Did we copy them? What's...
Which one do you like better of those?
Oh, definitely Emperor's New Groove.
Okay,
for
yeah.
sure.
There were others besides the Road to El Dorado. The Prince of Egypt.
Prince of Egypt. That's a great movie.
Yeah. So again, like this was there was some great competition.
Yeah.
That Disney they weren't living up to during this time. But yeah, if you haven't seen The Emperor's New Groove in a while, go back and watch it. It's laugh out loud funny. So yeah, that was the last movie of the year 2000. Moving on to 2001, June 15th, 2001, Atlantis, the Lost Empire was released. I loved this one too.
Me too. I haven't watched it in a long time. That's another one
I
that I
haven't
need
either.
to revisit. But I do remember having some sort of computer game for it. And yeah, it's a good one. It's different, again, but it's good.
I had all of my birthday parties related to Disney movies, and that one came out right before my 7th or 8th birthday party. And so I had an Atlantis birthday party. The cake had all the characters on it, so, you know. But yeah, so Atlantis, the Lost Empire, you know, the Greek legend of Atlantis, a sci-fi movie, a departure, again, from the animation style. They were trying to do something different. They were trying to do something different with, you know, this story, something that hadn't been done in Disney animation, and lots of 3D animation involved in this too. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love the style of this movie. It is largely inspired by, and I know he worked a lot with the early story, but it's inspired by Mike Mignola's style, and he's a very famous comic book artist who created the Hellboy series. So I think that this movie has a big cult following with people who are fans of his work, because you do really see his style reflected in the characters here if you're familiar at all with his artwork. So that's cool. And I'm blanking on his name, but the guy who created the Klingon language for the Star Trek films created the Atlantean language for this movie.
Mark Okrand.
There you go.
I had it as my fun fact. I also had that other comic book animator as a fun fact too.
Well,
so look at you just getting both of those.
Stole all your
that's
info.
Good. No, that's good. I'm not surprised that you knew that. And as far as the cast, you had Michael J. Fox as Milo there, which was pretty cool.
Leonard Nimoy's in there. And
yes.
James Garner's in there.
Yeah, a big cast. But this is really underrated, though, and it's sad because it's really good. I haven't watched it in so long, but I feel like it probably holds up.
I think so. Because I do remember seeing it at some point after having like not really seen it for a long time and just really enjoying it. So
really action-packed and a mystery, and the language that they made up for that the guy made up, it's really like, wow. So
yeah, I mean, they really put some creative thought into this whole, not just the story and the characters, but just like the whole world that they're existing in. It's really impressive.
Need to revisit that. So that was Atlantis, the Lost Empire, my 7th birthday theme. And then a year later, on June 21st, 2002, Lilo and Stitch was released. One of my favorite animated Disney movies, and certainly my favorite of this era of the post-Renaissance. I love Lilo and Stitch. Stitch is my all-time favorite Disney character.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah. No, I think this is definitely the best of the films from this era, for sure.
Yeah. It's really fun. It's a great comedy, and I love these characters. I love this movie. I love Lilo and Stitch.
I don't know if I love it as much as you do, but it's definitely one that I've come to appreciate more over time.
I think Lilo is so relatable for any kid who's just kind of not the one who fits in. So I might have related to that as a kid just a little bit.
Yeah, me too.
And it makes me cry, that movie. The scene where the little girls, they leave the dance studio and they have their dolls, and then Lilo pulls out her doll, which is like a homemade little creature, and she's telling them all about it, and then she looks up and they're gone, and she throws the doll down and then runs off mad, and then comes back to get the doll and just hugs her. And that breaks my heart. Like, that gets me. But
yeah, and it has just such a beautiful message. You have that whole concept of Oana throughout.
I'll say it. Ohana means family. Family means nobody gets left behind or forgotten.
Yeah, I think that's something that the filmmakers really didn't think about until they started researching Hawaii and went there and were being toured around and kind of experiencing the culture, and their guide was kind of telling them all about that and how important it was. And then they ended up kind of integrating it into this story, and it just works so beautifully.
The animation style is very cartoonish for this movie. Yeah, any thoughts on that?
I think it works well with this. And I love the way that they did the backgrounds. They used watercolor, which is not a material that they usually use. They usually use a different kind of paint. So it does add this like beautiful softness to it that I think just works so well with the Hawaiian setting and it being this paradise and all of that.
Yeah, a lot of this movie, or maybe all of it, I want to say, was made at the Florida studio at Hollywood Studios.
Yeah, and I think at this point in time was where the Burbank studio was really going through a major overhaul, and animators were being laid off. They basically like condensed it down to like one little unit, and they were starting to, I think, then make the transition over to 3D from 2D. So that's why I think this movie and a couple others from this time were primarily made in Florida, and I think some also at the little studio they had in Paris.
Yeah. I think it was like Mulan, Lilo and Stitch, Brother Bear, and maybe another one that I'm not remembering. But if you ever visit, well, it's not open, or it's not the animation building anymore, but the Art of Animation studio at Hollywood Studios, they had those films sort of celebrated on the walls in that building. So yeah, Lilo and Stitch, definitely probably the most successful of this era, the most remembered. Lilo was a big Elvis fan, so there's a lot of Elvis music in this movie. There are also some great Hawaiian songs. At the beginning of the movie, there's a great one, and then Hawaiian Roller Coaster. Love that one. You have a fun story about that.
I do. One of my friends was in the children's chorus who sang on Hawaiian Roller Coaster Ride. So
I love it.
So cool. Her name's in the credits at the end of the movie. It's great.
Nice. I Can't Help Falling in Love with You. The A-Teens did a version of that. Do you remember that?
Yes.
They were like a pop group, I think the UK, and they were supposed to be like a group that remade ABBA songs. And then just for some reason, they did this remake of Elvis Presley's Can't Help Falling in Love with You. And I loved that remake of the song. And my cousin and I had this like whole choreography that we made up to it. And it was really fun. No, seriously, love the Lilo and Stitch soundtrack. It also has a song by Winona on there. And I didn't really understand who Winona was until this movie. But my dad taught Winona Judd and Ashley Judd in high school, because he taught in the Nashville area as a teacher back in the day where they were. So anyway,
awesome.
Just throwing that out there. So, but she sings "Burn in Love" on the soundtrack. So, and do you remember the promotional ads they did for this movie? Like, they took the old movies and put Stitch into the promos for that, or in the scenes for like Beauty and the Beast and Little Mermaid and Aladdin. Loved those promotional spots for the movie. So good stuff. Yeah. Good marketing.
Yeah.
So,
I did see something popped up on my Facebook the other day that somebody posted, and it was one of the deleted scenes from the movie, and it made me remember that this was originally, there were a lot of different elements to it that had to be changed in the wake of 9/11. Like they had a part at the climax where they hijack an airplane, and then the deleted scene that this person posted was of Lilo and Stitch going to this beach with all these tourists and, tricking the dumb tourists by getting them all scared about the tsunami sirens during the tsunami drill. So those were all things that were scrapped or changed as a result of that.
I remember that now that you say that. So, Yeah, this would have been the first movie, the first Disney animated movie post 9/11. So, also that year though, November 27th, 2002, Treasure Planet was released, which I know you really like this one, so I'll let you sort of talk about this movie.
I do really like it from what I remember. And it's based on the Robert Louis Stevenson story, Treasure Island, which is, of course, a pirate story. So this is actually derived from that, but it's set in space. And it's kind of like a weird type of space. It's not like regular space. It's like there's oxygen, so not everybody's like going around in helmets and all of that. And instead of spaceships, they travel on more like traditional ships, mostly from what I remember. So that's kind of an interesting kind of mesh of the two. So it's definitely more of a sci-fi movie, though. Things happen. There's some great characters. Like I love Captain Amelia, who's this great like female commander of this ship, and she's not a human. She's like a cat person, kind of. There's some interesting like species in this film, like dog people, and
I liked Morph. Remember Morph, the little pink?
Yes,
I don't know what she was, but yeah,
I
liked that. I don't remember seeing this, I don't think, but I guess I did, and I didn't really love it. And then, it came out right before Christmas. So for Christmas that year, I think I woke up that morning and a bunch of my presents were like these toys from the Disney store of Treasure Planet characters, which was fine, and I played with them a lot, but I just really didn't love this movie. And so, yeah, I know that Ron and John, this is a Ron and John movie, Ron Clements and John Musker, who did Little Mermaid and Aladdin and Hercules. They had wanted to do this movie for a long time, but this was just, again, another departure. The animation style, it looks different from anything we'd seen. All of these movies in this era, none of the animation styles really match. They're all doing something different.
Yeah, there's no sort of consistency, and I don't know if that has to do, I guess it's a combination of both the changing mediums, going from 2D to 3D and kind of combining the two, and also sourcing work to different studios, making them in Florida and Paris, and then a little bit at the Burbank studio. And a lot of the talent was changing around this time too, because people were leaving and all of that. But yeah, what I like about this movie is how all of the environments are 3D, but the characters are 2D, which seems like something that might not work that well, but I think it works very well in this movie. And I like it. I like that it doesn't look like your typical sci-fi film set in space, just because the whole outer space thing that they've created here is not what you traditionally expect. So it's very colorful still. It's not like a cold space movie. Lots of great settings, interesting characters, all that. So
yeah. Not the biggest success, though. It has kind of a cult following. It's considered underrated, but here's where you start to see Disney on this downward spiral of what were they doing at this time. And when we get to a certain movie in a few years, as we keep going here, like I'm gonna talk about how there was a point where I was just like done. I was like, what are you doing, Disney? I don't understand. And I was really upset. So we'll get to that movie in a minute. But any other thoughts on Treasure Planet?
Even though it didn't do good box office, I think critics liked it. And I know it was nominated for an Oscar.
Yes.
That year for Best Animated Feature.
Yeah. By the way, I don't know if it'll make it in the final cut of the Renaissance episode, but you said that the Best Animated Feature category was introduced in the 90s.
It was 2001. I'm sorry.
It was 2001.
I'm sorry. I should have known that you were going to bring that up.
Yeah.
Rub it in my
Such
face.
a shame, though. Such a shame, though, that category was not around when Disney was making all those good ones.
And I'm surprised that it wasn't, because you did have, even at that time, other studios making some great movies. So kind of
and then
weird.
Disney doesn't end up winning, other than the Pixar movies. They don't end up winning until Frozen, which is like 2013. So 12 years into that category being out. So, all right. So a year later, 2003, November 1st, 2003, Brother Bear was released. I do enjoy this one. There's this whole joke now that Brave, that Pixar released several years after Brother Bear. It's this whole joke of like, oh, Pixar just made Brother Bear because the same thing kind of happens in that movie, although it's a totally different story. But I really like Brother Bear. I do. Yeah. It's heartwarming. It's 2D traditional animation. It's a really fun story, a good message, and the music is by Phil Collins, who they brought back after the success of Tarzan. And so a great soundtrack. You've got several great songs there. So,
like, I remember all the advertising and stuff with it when it came out, but I don't remember seeing it in the theaters.
I have a vivid memory of seeing it. Yeah, my cousin went with us, and yeah.
I do like it. It's not a favorite of mine. I think it's decent. I think when you compare it to other animated movies that other studios were making at this time, it's definitely, not nearly as groundbreaking or exciting, but it's still, it's a pretty good movie.
Back to Phil Collins and the soundtrack. It's not as good as the Tarzan soundtrack, but you've got a great song called, I think it's called Great Spirits or something, that Tina Turner sings, and it's really good. You have a song called Welcome that's good. Take a Look Through My Eyes is a good one. So really great music in there, even though it's not as popular as the Tarzan soundtrack that Phil Collins also did. I think one's called I'm On My Way, and that's a good one, or On My Way or something that I like. So
I do know that this was the kind of movie that Eisner was kind of wanting them to do, because all these other, like, all animal movies had been really successful, like Lion King and all of that. But yeah, the voice cast is pretty great.
Yeah, Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah. He's the main guy, and Rick Moranis, I think, voices one of the mooses.
Oh, hey, Rick Moranis. How you doing? Is meese the plural of moose?
No.
Is that not right?
No, there's no
Are
way
you
that
serious?
that's right. Hang on.
Okay, well, geese is the plural of goose, but meese is not the plural of moose.
No.
Okay. Oh, my word. Okay. So he has two moose friends that are really funny. And, yeah, okay. Well, that's about all I've got about Brother Bear. So we move to 2004, April 2nd, 2004. Oh, man. Now, is this the movie that you thought was going to be the one where I was like, what are you doing, Disney?
You're talking about Home on the Range?
Well, yeah, that's the one that's coming up next.
Yeah.
But is this the one you were thinking
Yeah.
that I was going to say?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, it's actually not. But yeah, Home on the Range, April 2nd, 2004. I remember going to see this. It came out like the Friday of spring break for me that year. And then like the very next morning, my family, we all went on a Disney cruise. But for some reason, we had to go see this before the Disney cruise, even though I could have watched it on the cruise. Could have waited. Oh my goodness. Could have gone my whole life without seeing this movie, to be honest. But
Really?
saw it anyway and was very underwhelmed. But I was not like in this mode of like, Disney, this was terrible, what's going on, yet. I was still like holding on to my like love for Disney that, that I just was kind of blinded, I guess. So
It doesn't feel like a Disney movie to me. I mean, it feels like something.
One of those little knockoff versions of a Disney movie you'll find at the store,
Yeah, I mean, the style of, like, the humor and everything, I mean, it's very fast-paced, very silly, slapsticky, almost more like Looney Tunes type of humor, I feel like, as opposed to Disney.
The Western theme, that's kind of a cute idea. Disney hadn't really done that so much, so I could see where they might have been going with that, but it just does not work, the story of it. Roseanne Barr is like the main cow, Maggie, and then you also had Judi Dench voicing one of the cows.
Judy, what are you doing here? You could have saved her for something so much better.
Judi Dench.
I mean, come on.
And then the villain was voiced by Randy Quaid. Yeah. But, yeah. Who else? Oh, Cuba Gooding Jr. was in this, and I don't know. I don't know what they were doing with this movie, honestly. Like, I just remember leaving the theater and being like, what was that? It hadn't really hit me yet that Disney was not making movies like they used to. So, but it's coming. It's coming. I had a very specific experience. So,
I think I know which one you're talking about now.
Okay.
But
anything else about Home on the Range? Alan Menken did the music for it. How sad is that?
It is so sad. I mean,
not very good.
Why?
Not very good music there. Alan Menken.
I mean, I don't even remember any of the music really.
Something about this little patch of heaven or something. You don't remember that?
No.
And then the villain, he yodels. Remember that? Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that's what happened. So, but not very good. I don't think people even consider this to be like an underrated or anything.
It's no rating. No rating.
I mean, I would list it down there as one of the worst Disney animated movies ever.
I think
that
so.
bad.
Yeah.
It is that bad. It is down there with Frozen for me.
Is it better than Frozen or worse than Frozen?
No, it's worse than Frozen.
Okay,
it's worse than Frozen.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. Okay. That's all I got for Home on the Range. Ugh. 2005 brought us, November 4th, 2005, brought us Chicken Little. And this is the one. This is the one where I got so excited, like always, new Disney movie, yay, here we go. And left the theater, and I was just so confused. And then I got mad. Eventually, I was just like, I went through this whole phase of like, I don't know what Disney's doing. They're not making movies like they used to. These movies that they're making now aren't very good. I'm very upset with this company that I have loved so much my whole life and have just, shown so much support for. And everybody, considered me like this Disney person. And I was like embarrassed to, be such a big fan at that time with this horrible movie and Home on the Range, and just, I could not handle it. So I had a very specific experience there. Like, I vividly remember just being very mad at Disney, and I would pray at night that like Disney would start making their movies good again. That's how serious this was. Not even joking. So.
And how old were you again at this time?
Let's see. I would have probably been about 9.
These are some pretty deep thoughts for a 9-year-old.
I was maybe like 10.
Okay.
I was 10.
Still. Wow.
Or 11. I don't know. I was probably like 5th grade when this came out. So, yeah. No, this was very disappointing. And I didn't leave the theater like, oh, that was so bad. But I just remember riding in the car on the way home and I just got deep in some thoughts about like, what is Disney doing? So
yeah, this is one that I know I did not see in the theater when it came out, but we bought it when it came out on DVD since we hadn't seen it yet, and I was really looking forward to watching it. Like, it looked very funny, and yeah, I do remember maybe not having like so many deep thoughts as you did, but being like, yeah, there's something missing here. It's not good.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's notable because it was the first full 3D animated Disney movie. And that's sad that that's the one. But that's kind of all I got. I think it also was like one of the first they released in 3D.
Yeah, I mean, this was where they really started kind of like overhauling the studio and like selecting animators and being like, okay, we're going to train you guys on all the 3D software, and really working with that, because I think at this time it was where like their deal with Pixar was about to expire, and they weren't sure if that was going to be renewed because relations between Eisner and John Lasseter and Steve Jobs were not very good. So I think that they were kind of acting with the assumption that Pixar might not be linked with them anymore. And yeah, I mean, I think that this was a really successful movie, financially at least. It opened, I think, in the top spot at the box office when it came out, and made a lot of money, which is good for them. But yeah, I mean, it's sad that that's the one that was successful because a lot of those other movies we were just talking about are so much better.
And it could have worked. I mean, a cute idea, to take the story of Chicken Little and have all these fun little characters. You had you didn't have a villain, but you had the bully at the school was the fox, and I can't remember her name, but Foxy Loxy, right? Yeah, I don't know. But I just didn't like it.
And there were some big names in the cast too,
right?
That
Zach Braff.
were just so underused. Like Don Knotts is in there, and Adam West, and Catherine O'Hara. I mean, they weren't the main characters, but they were among the cast. And I don't know, that could have been Patrick Stewart. I mean,
and remember the little
people.
song? There's a good little song in there. One Little Slip. Remember that?
No.
Oh, I remember that song. I like that song. One Little Slip. I don't know who. I can't remember the band that sings it. I think it's a popular band, but One Little Slip was at the beginning of that movie, and I did like that song. And then the Cheetah Girls did a version of Shake a Tail Feather.
I do remember that.
That was catchy, but yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I'm good with moving on from Chicken Little, unless you got anything else to say.
I don't think I do.
So 2 years later, in 2007, March 3rd, 2007, Meet the Robinsons was released. And I saw this. I remember I saw it in 3D, and I really enjoyed it. It was a nice little surprise.
It's a really ambitious story, I feel like.
And hold on. Okay, wait just a second.
Yeah.
Because I have to look up. Wasn't there a movie in between this that... Hold on. Yep, okay. There was a movie in between Meet the Robinsons and Chicken Little that Disney... I think they just distributed the movie. But do you remember it was called The Wild? It looked just like Madagascar.
Yeah.
That was another one where I didn't even go to the movie theater to see that. I was so mad. I was like, Disney, stop.
I don't think I've ever even seen that movie.
Yeah,
honestly.
I don't think that it's not a canon, movie. It's not in the Disney Animation, canon, but they released that and distributed it at least, and, did the marketing and all that. And I was not happy about that. Okay, but anyway, Meet the Robinsons 2007, that was a nice little surprise. It's really clever.
It is, yeah. And I still feel like there's something missing, it doesn't have...
It doesn't feel like a Disney movie, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's missing something that all those other great Disney movies had that just make you go yes, this is amazing. But
it's weird.
It's
there's
weird,
some
but
weird elements to
yeah.
it. So the future that they created is kind of odd. But it's heartwarming. It's got a good message. It's the one where they use Walt Disney's quote about keep moving forward is kind of the message of the movie. So that's really cool. There's a T-Rex in the movie, and that was always funny. And he's got a big head and little arms.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great.
I think that this is another one that we didn't see in the theaters, but I watched it later, and I was impressed. Because, I remember seeing the previews for it when it was first released and being like, I don't know. But, yeah.
Yeah, I was still not satisfied, though. I was still on my Disney get it together, But,
I mean,
strike.
This is definitely, the start of them kind of getting back on track for sure.
Right. And, after Chicken Little, I was done with my whole... And I think I just kind of grew out of it, too, but... getting all revved up for a Disney animated movie release and buying, toys and stuff. So part of it was that I grew out of it, but now I still wind up buying little, I bought a Baymax plush and that sort of thing.
Also bought the Baymax plush. So,
yeah. So I still buy little things now that the movies are better, but at that time I was on strike and kind of mad at Disney. That year though, and this is not one of the movies that, is a part of the animated lineup, but the holiday season that year, they released Enchanted. And that was redemption, pretty much, almost.
Yeah.
It was kind of wow, I think they kind of recognized that people missed the old style of Disney animation and missed the fairy tales and that sort of thing. And so that was a redeeming movie for me, I think.
Yeah, I
was
mean,
Enchanted.
I definitely remember being so excited when that was about to come out, and hearing from other Disney fans who were so excited about like the 2D animated parts of it, you know, throwing it back to the, you know, old fairy tales and princess stories. And yeah, it's just such a great spoof, and also and also homage to those movies.
Yeah,
I love that.
Enchanted came out the day after my nephew was born, so yeah, that was fun. Okay, well, there is one last movie to discuss in this era, and that is 2008's Bolt. Do you remember seeing this movie?
Nope.
Okay, I don't either, because I didn't go see this in theaters.
I don't think I did either.
And the reason why is because it featured Miley Cyrus as a voice character, as a voice actress. I was not a Miley Cyrus fan. Like, I watched Hannah Montana and I enjoyed like maybe the first season, but then something just happened where I didn't like Miley Cyrus so much. And I've never been a huge fan. I'm not like a hater of Miley Cyrus. I just was never a huge fan, even though I went on to be an extra in the movie because they filmed it where I live. But, the Hannah Montana movie. But yeah, that's the main reason I didn't want to go see Bolt. After seeing it, though, it's not that bad. I like it.
I do like it. Yeah, I like it. I think it's probably a better movie than Meet the Robinsons, even if it's not as unique as that one is. I mean, it's definitely a more sort of conventional story, but you start to feel a bit more like, okay, yes, Disney, we're going somewhere with this.
I think so, yeah.
I think that this was was this the first of the movies that they made after John Lasseter kind of came in and started taking over things and revamping? Yeah.
Because there was a big spread in some magazine that just showed all of the movies that John Lasseter had helped do that really sort of have revamped Walt Disney Animation. I think this one is still considered to be part of the post-Renaissance more so than the revival era, but it could fall either way.
Yeah, definitely.
And it got nominated for Best Animated Feature Film, so Bolt did. So, and that is the end of this era of post-Renaissance time. Overall, not the best, really. Just a weird time. They were trying lots of creative things to make the movies different and to incorporate 3D animation. And there was a lot of competition with Dreamworks and Pixar. So, yeah, just not the best.
But things get better from here, so
things do get better from here. Our next episode, we're back on track. We will get into the revival era. Yay, the most recent and our last episode. I can't believe we're almost done. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Dis-connected on the post-Renaissance era. Katie, thanks so much for joining me for this Dis-cussion, as always.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, be sure to follow mine and Katie's social media links in the description below. Follow at Disney_connected on Instagram for more Dis-connected content. And until next time, have a magical day, and I'll see you real soon, folks.